Thank you for coming. Really appreciate the interest that you have in our program now. Alrighty, so anyway, let's get going. Uh, Rutgers Vegetable IPM program. Yes, I'm the senior coordinator for it, and as a result, uh, we try to have a program statewide that covers vegetable production, and we have two of us that provide the program. Myself and Chris Holmstrom, who covers basically the north part of the state. I take care of the south end. This happened by accident, more or less, not planned, but this is the way things have worked out. Between the two of us, we are the program. And under us, we have then a statewide network of insect traps. We conduct field scouting, we do research, and we have an educational outreach. Doing programs like this, we also go to state and regional, national meetings to talk about our research and what's going on in New Jersey. We also have the IPM update in the growing season via the Plant and Pest newsletter advisory. And we do maintain a website, although I must say we won't win any awards for that website, but anyway, it's there. All right, so this is us. But before we get started, I want to go through and define what is IPM. Okay? Different people have different ideas. And to break this down, IPM stands for, of course, Integrated Pest Management. It's a subset of another larger idea of integrated crop management. In integrated crop management, you look at all aspects of crop production to weave together the best management practices. Okay, in looking at IPM is then a subset of that. And so, integrated, we're looking at using a variety of means for controlling pests. Okay, controlling or managing. In some cases, we hope to exterminate the pest, not just simply manage it, just simply get rid of it. All right, pest. Any organism that interferes with the growth, the development of the crop, harvesting of the crop. And over the years, I have found that there are a very wide range of pests. Insects, plant diseases, weeds, nematodes, the guy who's driving the tractor. You can go through some fields and see where the fellow that's cultivating the crop has either fallen asleep or he's swatting a bee or something, and because suddenly everything goes this way and there's crop plants tore up and then up and then jerks back and everything's okay again. All right, and then management. We're manipulating the pest to reduce or prevent crop injury and loss. Okay, and so this is our basic definition for our program. Integrated pest management, IPM, is a philosophy. It's an attitude, it's an idea that we have a problem, we're going to try to solve it. And whatever means it takes to solve the problem, as long as it is practical, economical, and socially acceptable, let's go for it, okay? So, we have our pest, whatever pest that may be, and an attempt to manage it. Now, I'm not sure a flamethrower necessarily qualifies as practical, economical, or socially acceptable, but it's fun. Okay? So, using that as a description of one means of managing pests, hopefully we look for slightly less dramatic practices. Okay. All right, so the goal then for us is to increase the profitability for farmers. We really want them to stay in business without sacrificing quality or quantity. To do that sometimes is a tricky proposition. Sometimes this means reducing pesticide applications when none are necessary, because we can, at various times during the growing season, go into a crop and realize that there really isn't anything there. In tree fruit, I used to be a private consultant in Michigan, and I worked a lot with tree fruit as well as vegetables and field crops. And in tree fruit, they have the practice of cover sprays. Every 2 weeks, you go out and spray, regardless whether there's any pests or not. I had to almost virtually fight with the farmers to knock off the cover sprays. There's nothing there. You're not killing anything. You're just blowing money out the spray nozzles. It took, for one of our growers, it took 6 years before he finally relented. And during that 2-week period where he did not spray, he was on pins and needles. He was worried to death that something was going to happen, and nothing did. Everything was fine. That's a case of reducing pesticide use. In some situations, we actually say you need to increase spraying, depending on what the situation is with the pest. We have migratory pests, especially, that you cannot control in other ways effectively. You can't wait for beneficial insects to come in and consume the migratory pest. There aren't enough spiders out there if we have overwhelming numbers of a migratory pest coming in. You know, all your usual alternatives to pesticide use don't really work that well with migratory pests. And so we have situations when, yes, you do need to get out there now and spray. Otherwise, you're going to have severe crop loss or crop damage. So migratory pests, especially insects and plant pathogens that have wind-borne spores, require spray applications of pesticides. It's very difficult to get around that. Okay. Program history. The IPM program was founded by Dr. Don Prostak. He started the program in 1976. So I would dare say that we are among the oldest programs being carried on by cooperative extension, if not possibly the oldest. He focused primarily on sweet corn insect management and developed a system specifically aimed at managing corn earworm in soak sprays and sweet corn. He took a major step forward with this, and initially we had a large number of farms participate in the program. The program was doing very well. And then at some point, he decided that it was time to turn the program over to private consultants. And that didn't work out so well. Private consultants came in, tried to work with the farmers, and I'm not totally certain what the problem was, but it didn't work out well. The the private consultants weren't able to deliver the program similar to what Don had developed, and it gradually fell apart. And some of those farmers left the IPM program permanently. There are some farms, especially here in Burlington County, that used to be members of the program, but have not been involved now for many years. At any rate, the last private consultant went out of business in about 2003. Just wasn't able to deliver the program the way the farmers wanted, and so he left. So we took back many of those farms, and since then we've been holding steady of around about 60 to 65 farms a year, trying to develop a program and get it back and up like it used to be. Don left the program in 1998, and I became senior coordinator in 1999, and I've been here since. Okay, so a little bit on program history. A lot has changed in the time since Don started the program. We used to have a large potato production area outside of south of New Brunswick area. A lot of potato farms. Those farms are now gone. We've had a number of actually still pecan potatoes. The potatoes are almost done in South Jersey. We have about 7 or 8 farms that grow potatoes anymore in the state, where there used to be lots. There's been a lot of shifting, largely due to urbanization, development coming in. We see now kind of a progression in crops that starts out with fruit, and then it sort of has a tendency to migrate into vegetable production. And then when vegetable production kind of begins to give out, it kind of transforms into field crops, field corn and soybeans and so on. And then finally, when that doesn't pan out, the next step is houses. You know, that's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. All right. So we've seen a lot of change in our agricultural base in the time since Don started this program in 1976. We still have some farms in the program that were in originally back at that time, and that's really great. They've stuck with us. So, but times do change. The current program this year, counted up, we have 59 farms. We have shift in farms because in some cases a farmer dies, which has happened in a couple of situations. We've had farms that have shifted. They have gone, especially in the Hamilton area, we've had 2 or 3 farms there that grew vegetables, didn't see that they were making that much money, and shifted their cropping systems into blueberries. And so when they make that transition, they drop out of our program. Some farmers just simply go out of business, and that's happened to us as well. So, and unfortunately, this has happened more in the south part of the state than in the north. Currently, our program then has 59 farms, and as Meredith alluded to, we have a fee basis for our program. It's not free. Farmers pay a base of $450 a year, and this is coming to check a blacklight trap and possibly other traps that we set out to, that we think that will help the farmer. We do field scouting. We charge approximately $20 per acre for the crop that we scout, and this will vary depending on the crop. Sweet corn is 20, pumpkins is $25 an acre, and so on. So it is a fee-based program. When we add this all up, we have some farms that end up paying us over $3,000 a season for our services. That includes paying a field summer technician, the wages, mileage and hourly wage, plus maintenance of the traps and so on. So it does take quite a bit to keep us operating. Including the tree fruit IPM program here at Rutgers, we're about the only university-supported pest management programs left in the country. Back in the late 60s, 70s, early 80s, Most of the IPM programs were supported by universities, but over time they found it was expensive. They were running conflicts with private consultants, and if you go out to the Midwest, you'll find that private consultants are almost entirely delivering the pest management programs, and so we're just about the last state in the country that has this. And that's partly because New Jersey's kind of a unique situation. We still have a lot of farmland, although sometimes you kind of have to look to find it, but it is there. And we have a lot of urban, suburban areas. And private consultants find that difficult to make money in because they have to have a large crop farm base for their work. And when you have to drive half an hour through subdivisions to get to a farm, that's not really cost effective. And so here in New Jersey, we still maintain our program through the university because if we left it over to the private consultants, many of the farms that we work with just wouldn't have anybody coming. So the majority of farms that we have raise sweet corn. I guess that's still probably our primary focus crop, is that where we make the most inroads is to convince farmers, no, you don't have to spray every 3 days for controlling corn earworm and sweet corn. And so that's usually how we end up getting onto farms. But we also do a lot of pepper, tomato, pumpkin, scouting. Coal crops is a large crop that we deal with, especially here in North Jersey. But it's up to the farmers to decide what they want us to work with. Provide trap information and pest information on. The North Jersey farms tend to be smaller. Nearly all of them have farm markets or pick your own situations, okay? In South Jersey, the farms tend to be larger, more geared toward processing vegetables. One of the more recent farms that we've picked up grows 500 acres of sweet corn, which is quite a lot of sweet corn. And it's a bit of a challenge getting the pheromone trap to track corn earworm. It's a challenge getting the trap out to the different fields at the right time, because 500 acres, he's got, I would say he's got maybe a 10 square mile area that he rents land from other landowners to plant the corn. And so it's always a trick to figure out, okay, where's the next planting? We got to get a trap out there. Where is it? And some of the confusion, some of the little details that you wouldn't think would interfere with something like this come into play. They have names. The farmer has a name for every one of those locations. And I don't know those names. And so he says, go over to the Parnell place or back of Carl's. Carl? Who's Carl? Where's Carl? And so it becomes a bit of a challenge staying on top of where these traps need to be. All right. And the other aspect about the farms in South Jersey is that many fewer have farm markets associated with the farm. Only about half of the farms that we work with have farm markets. Okay. And this map gives an approximate location of where our farms are around the state. You notice that in the area designated Pinelands, we don't have much there. Deer sort of own that territory. People that try to raise crops there have a lot of trouble with deer. And unfortunately, deer is not one of the pests that we deal with very well in the IPM program. We should train a fleet of dogs or something to chase deer. I don't know. That's a tough one. And you'll notice that up in the northern part of the state, up in this area. We also don't have any farms up here. Very populated. Now, there are small farms scattered around up there. But even for us, it's very difficult for us to get into some of these localities to take care of checking the traps and so on. Again, largely because it's so difficult to get there because of traffic and so on. A small farm? Well, if you look into the Census of Agriculture, they start with 1 to 5 acres. But I think that's because New Jersey has this thing, 5-acre minimum for designating a farm, $500 worth of produce, something like that. For us, a small farm is probably something on the order of maybe about 20 acres. I think that's about the bottom size for our farms. Then our larger farm, like say the one farm has the 500 acres of sweet corn. We have another farm that raises 140 acres of sweet corn. Altogether, we have over 1,000 acres of sweet corn that we help manage in the program. We do have a mission statement. It's nice to know what direction you're heading in. I feel that without a mission statement, we'd be just running around doing this and that. And this helps keep our focus. Vegetable IPM program is dedicated to developing and improving integrated pest management techniques and practices that will enhance vegetable production in the state of New Jersey. Program objectives are accomplished through the development and delivery of pest monitoring and field scouting programs, grant-funded research, and educational outreach. Pretty much what I listed out in that first slide, showing the overview of the program. So, how do we go about accomplishing this? First, we have this statewide network of insect traps. The blacklight traps that we use have used since the program inception back in '76. The blacklights, to me, they sort of look like robots out of the 1950 sci-fi movies. You know, it's kind of this clunky thing, you know, that just looks ominous when you see it there. And actually, how this operates is that we have an ultraviolet fluorescent bulb that sits in here, and it's on all the time. So even on cloudy days, you can see it. It comes on in the evening. We have a funnel here so that the insects that get disoriented knock into the panes or hang on, fly around, eventually they fall down into the funnel. They get concentrated, drop down into the bottom of the bucket here, and we have a no pest strip down in the bottom canister that kills the insects. And then we come along about usually a 3 to 4 day period and take the canister off and count the insects. Dump them out in a tray and count them out, and that's how we check the trap. And this is what Chris is doing here. He's servicing this blacklight trap. These traps, as you might see from that second photo here, they're about 5 feet tall. They probably weigh, I don't know, 15, 20 pounds. The newer versions, if you were to go to Gempler's to try to buy a blacklight trap, Gempler's is a large agricultural supply outfit. They now make the canister down here out of stainless steel. Those traps are noticeably heavier, maybe 40 pounds. And we used to be able to buy these traps for around $300. Now one of these ranges anywhere from $1,400 to $2,000. We have occasionally vandalism of the traps. I set out one trap a few years ago. Admittedly, I realized it was sort of a high-risk area, but I thought maybe it'll be okay. It wasn't. Somebody came along at 2 o'clock in the morning, put the blacklight trap, unplugged it, set it out in the middle of an intersection.
Oh, no.
And when I realized, wait a minute, I was driving past on my way to another farm, and I looked over, and Where's the blacklight trap? Stopped, went back and looked, and there were parts over there, there were parts over there, and over there, and over there. I mean, it was just obliterated. Called the state police. They came and then said, hey, you know, well, first I had to convince them that, yes, there really was a problem here. And I said that had to be somebody that picked it up and carried it out there. He thought, well, maybe a vehicle just veered off and knocked it out. No. Anyway, I told him, I said, you know, this is serious stuff because it's going to cost me $2,000 to replace this. Oh. Okay, well, hey, we'll listen. Usually somebody, you know, starts to brag about how they vandalize something or other. And sooner or later, somebody will come up with something, you know, and we'll get them. Never heard from them again. So, anyway, we still maintain this trap system. The traps are wearing out. We constantly have to figure out ways to replace the canister because these rust out. And it's a bit of a problem. We've approached the Rutgers University shop about repairing them, and they helped make a little design change in it. But after the first 15 traps or so, they said, well, this has been fun, but we're moving on. And we've gone to other shops trying to find somebody that could make, you know, the bottoms, canisters especially, rust out. And so far we haven't found anybody. So we put rubber buckets inside the canisters and duct tape across the bottom, and you know, but they still work. We still get reliable numbers of them. Okay, and then in addition to the blacklight trap, we have a lot of pheromone traps. The blacklight traps operate because there's a lot of night flying insects that get disoriented by that light. A lot of the moths will use the moon as their navigational reference. What lights do, and even the back door light that you have at your house, that conflicts with the moon, and so insects are not attracted to the light. They're disoriented and fixate on that artificial light source and then try to fly accordingly. Well, in the end, all they do is just wind up circling around and banging into it and so on. So it's disorientation as opposed to actually attracting the insects. With the pheromone traps, we're working on a different premise. Here, we're actually attracting the pests. We want them to come into the trap because we're putting lures in there to entice them. The pheromones usually fall into two categories: sex pheromones or aggregation pheromones. A lot of insects, when they go to overwinter, will release what they call aggregation pheromones, saying, hey, I found a nice cozy spot to hang out for the winter, come and join me, sort of thing. And so you get all these insects. Ladybugs are a good example of this. You can sometimes find large numbers of ladybugs crammed into a relatively small area. The sex attractants, usually it's a pheromone from a female that we put in the trap so it will attract the males. So one distinction that we really have to keep even reminding ourselves is we have two different ways of trapping insects. One is visually, where we get both sexes, males and females. The other trapping system, most of the time when we use pheromone traps, we're trying to attract the males. So this means that we have to think of the population being pretty much evenly distributed, 50-50 sex ratio. If it's something other than that, we have problems. For example, if we have a sex ratio of 30-70, 30% males, 70% females, and we have the big cone trap there in the bottom center. We get some number of males there. We make the assumption, well, there's probably roughly the same number of females out there. But if it's a distorted sex ratio where there's 70%, the recommendation we make off of this trap catch is going to be not very good. And the farmers are going to complain to us that when we're out there harvesting our sweet corn, we're finding worms in the tips of the ears. It's not good. So we work with these traps day in and day out, but even for Chris and I, we have to keep reminding ourselves, one is a pheromone trap, one is a light source. And so you get different kinds of mixtures of the sexes in these traps. Okay, so this is a pepper weevil trap. We'll talk more about this later on. But there's two lures that go up here at the top of the trap and attracts the weevils. It's both a sex pheromone and an aggregation pheromone. Over here we have a bucket trap, and this is a very common type of trap for us to use. We use it for a number of different pests, fall armyworm, beet armyworm, and so on. And we also use it, we used bucket traps to work with oriental beetle, attracting the males. And that was very interesting. We put these out to, with a lure for oriental beetles, the males. We got thousands of beetles coming to the traps, to the point that it wasn't worthwhile putting the traps out. And in fact, the lures, the males are so sensitive to the sex pheromone that I kept a couple of the lures in a little small bottle. And 4 years later, just for grins, I'd take a moment as I'm doing my work, take that bottle out, take the cap off, set it on the hood of the truck, and within a minute, I had adult oriental beetle males flying into that bottle. 4 years later. I mean, they're really keyed into that. So, anyway, down here we have a pheromone trap that's designed to catch European corn borer. This kind of a trap is made out of a plastic mesh, and in the end it's not a really great trap. But this is very durable, and this is now becoming one of our mainstays for tracking corn earworm. This is an unusual trap here. It looks like a long paper towel roll. It's painted yellow to attract pepper weevil, but it's also impregnated with an insecticide and a feeding stimulant. So the weevils would be attracted to this. They, because of the feeding stimulant impregnated in the paint and so on, the weevils would eat, pick up the insecticide and die. So that has been an interesting trap to work with. Okay, we conduct field scouting, sampling plants in a field and comparing to threshold values. Each crop has its own method and thresholds, which may vary according to the crop. For example, in scouting sweet corn, we look at 50 plants per field, and Chris likes to use the 5 plants in 10 locations. I like to use 10 plants in 5 locations. Statistically, it comes out about the same. So we track the sweet corn plants in the whorl stage. As soon as the plants begin to send up the tassel's fully extended and begins putting out silk, then we stop field scouting and we go over to using these charts that we have that Don Prostek created initially. This is a chart that will track the number of insects that we catch over a 5-day period. So we arrive on Tuesday, we look at what's in the black light trap, and we go to this chart and we count back how many moths did we see in the past 5 days. and then we set that number according to the date here on the chart, and it's bracketed out so that it tells what your spray schedule should be for that number of moths. And this is how we've been providing the soaking spray information, the schedule that the farmer should be on. Okay, so we're no longer scouting the field. We just rely on the trap information, plot it out, and it gives the farmers that information. You should be on a 3-day schedule or a 5-day schedule, depending on the count. Okay, now you can pass this around and take a look at it if you wish. Okay, for peppers and tomatoes, we examine the leaves on the plant. We also look at the fruit. Okay, again, we look at 50 plants, and the statistics on this are really pretty strange. If you've got a 10-acre field of peppers and you're only looking at 50 plants in that 10 acres, you know, that seems really peculiar. Like, wouldn't you want to sample 200 plants? Well, no, actually it works out best sampling 50 plants at a time. That gives you enough information to make good, educated recommendations. Doesn't seem like it should work that way, but it does. Sampling is done at random points within the field of planting. Results of scouting and trap numbers are left with the farmer after each visit. Usually we make 2 visits per week. Sometimes it comes down to once a week, but we try to get there twice a week. Insects are the primary pests that we look for, but we also check out plant diseases and weeds. We actually pay attention probably the least to weeds. Farmers in general know that they can potentially have weed problems, and so they select the herbicides they're going to use long before we ever get to the field. All right. Most of our field scouting is conducted in northern New Jersey. We do have a private consultant who is based in Delaware who does come into southern New Jersey and maintain a presence there. So we have a number of the farms that we used to have in our program that have now gone with the field scouting from the private consultant. However, we have the money to have all the traps and so on, so some farms have that private consultant and then us coming in and doing the insect trapping. And so between the two sources of information, they're able to make their decisions. We do scout some fields in the south, some farms. There are a couple of farmers who say, no, there's no way I'm going to go with a private consultant. I want to go with Rutgers. And some of the smaller farms are just too far out of the way for the private consultants to deal with. And so we work with them. Okay, reporting to the farmer. We compare trap counts and results of field scouting to threshold values and make recommendations accordingly. Even though we may make a recommendation for a course of action or using a particular pesticide, it is the farmer's decision as to what's going to be done. Okay, the research aspect, I'm going to kind of go over this rather quickly. We have bacterial canker in tomatoes, brown marmorated stink bug, correlate trap catches of corn earworm, pumpkin IPM, and pepper weevils invasion pathways. I just want to say just a word or two about each of these. The research that we do is geared toward really problematic pests for our growers. The first one is bacterial canker. This has probably been one of the best research projects that we've had, possibly making the biggest impact, not only in New Jersey, but surrounding states. Bacterial canker is a seed-borne disease. It can overwinter in plant debris. It affects tomatoes primarily, but it can overwinter in tomato debris where the disease was present. It can live on solanaceous plants, the Jimson weed, horse nettle, other plants in the solanaceous family. So that becomes a problem. Insect injury and hail, sandblasting promotes the infection of the bacteria on plants. and thrips, strange little insects that that scrape away the surface tissue of the leaves and stems of plants, just simply help magnify the disease. Bacterial canker is a bacteria that has caused a lot of problems for our tomato growers. And for a while, it seemed like almost every tomato farmer was battling this disease. Chris has a degree in plant pathology, and so he headed up the efforts to try to find out more about how this disease is getting spread and so on. And we now know that hot water seed treatments are the best way to help manage this disease. Hot water seed treatment. You take the seeds that you're going to plant and put them in a hot water bath. The temperature has to be precise, and you leave it in for X number of minutes, and then you take the seed out, dry it off, and then once it's dried off, you can go ahead and plant. It's you have to adhere to the temperature requirements and the length of time that the seeds are in the bath, because you can kill the germination of the seed if you're not careful. But the hot water bath is probably the best way to help kill off the bacteria. Okay, brown marmorated stink bug. This insect, I'm sure you're all familiar with. In 2000, starting in 2000, we used our blacklight traps to see the expansion of the stink bug across New Jersey. Each year after 2000, all we had to do is look at the black lights, what we were catching, determine if we had the brown marmorated stink bug in the trap. We could map the progression of it year after year across New Jersey, and became a very useful tool. A couple of graduate students have made their degrees based on that information. Okay, correlation of trap catches for corn earworm recommendations. And talked about the pheromone trap here and the blacklight trap. This catches insects because they're disoriented. This catches insects because of the pheromones. We would hope that they would both give the same recommendation, but they don't. Not in every situation. And in fact, it's only about a third of the time that we get the exact same recommendation off of these traps. So we've done a study to try to figure out how much correlation is there between these two trapping systems, and how can we get everybody on board so that each trapping system is saying the same thing. It led to a historical analysis of the corn earworm population as well. And we know that it's declining. In recent years, it's been declining. Over the past 10 years, each year it's been a little bit less, with a little bit of a blip a couple of years ago. This year, we've had a resurgence of the corn earworm. So I don't know quite what to make of that. But anyway, this is something that we're trying to work on to help our farmers for us to make better recommendations. And then we have pumpkin demonstration for adopting pest management practices in New Jersey. Pumpkin growers have pumpkins because of their high cash crop value and also ag entertainment value. And so a lot of farmers try to raise the pumpkins, and they get into problems with powdery mildew. Powdery mildew becomes a severe problem, causing the plants to wilt, reducing pumpkin vitality, yield, and so on. And we found that by field scouting the pumpkins, looking for the powdery mildew lesions, we can save One or more applications of fungicide, saving approximately $59 to $117 per acre by having our scouting program, which is a big cost savings, especially you consider that we charge $25. If we can save them $59 even, that's quite an advantage to the farmer. So what we do is we scout the fields. Farmers have the tendency to start spraying fungicide when the plants begin to put out their first vine run. That's when they would start to spray. We generally said, well, that's probably too early because you don't always have powdery mildew at that point. And so we started investigating, and now we find that once we find 2 lesions of powdery mildew on 50 leaves, that's the time to start applying fungicides. And so we may knock off as many as 4 fungicide applications for the farmers. That saves them time, saves them money of using all that fungicide, and so it works out the best for them in the long run, and without reducing any yields. So that's been a major plus for us. Because while we're on the farm, we talk to the farmers. Not only do they get the information for the particular crops that we're dealing with them with, but they get other information as well that affect the other crops they're raising. We directly impact about 1,200 acres of sweet corn in the state and 320 acres of pumpkins, just to give you some idea of the size of our program. Our data supports private consultants and agribusiness field people via newsletters, websites, and farm data, so that our impact is magnified through the private consultants and the agribusiness field men. All right. Of this 50,000 vegetable acres in New Jersey, it's really hard to say, but I'm guesstimating that we impact approximately 25,000 acres of that 50,000 total. Yes?
Has the rain impacted your spray schedule?
The rain has impacted everything. Be careful going out to any farm and saying, oh, how's the weather been for you this summer? You may not survive. Okay. All righty. Any last questions?